The ANC lost control of an entire city council in this latest round of pivotal by-elections. Here's what happened. So we've just had an enormous round of by-elections, 8 across the country to be exact, and 3 of these by-elections were in the Eastern Cape. Now, what was particularly notable about these by-elections is that the DA and the PA really enjoyed some sweet victories, whereas the ANC's decline just seems to be continuing. What's more, they lost control of an entire council due to one devastating result. But before we get into it, could I please remind you to subscribe to the channel? It's completely free, and all you have to do is click on the subscribe button in the bottom left corner of this video. Now let's get into it. So, starting off with the council where the ANC lost control entirely, we're talking about Kou-Kamma. So, Kou-Kamma Ward 2 was up for grabs in this latest by-election, where the PA was able to win the seat off of the ANC. Now, we actually saw the PA win a different seat off of the ANC in Kou-Kamma a few weeks ago. And so, from having just one seat previously, the PA now has 3. So they've done incredibly well. So to break down the population of Kou-Kamma Ward 2, about 55.3% of the population is coloured, 28.5% is black, and then around 15.4% is white. And they don't really seem to have much of an Indian population. And so it's a majority coloured area with quite a large black population as well, nearing 30%. So if we take a look at the voting districts and what happened there, the most populous voting district is in Loterwater, and it's the biggest by far. Now, the ANC will be particularly devastated because Loterwater used to be their stronghold, and as we can see here, the PA overtook the ANC. They got 1,068 votes here, whereas the ANC got 1,012. And if we take a look at the overall result, this pushed the PA over the line. So the PA came first in this ward with 44.04% of the vote, or 1,142 votes. The ANC trailed narrowly with 1,084 votes, or 41.8% of the vote. The DA did well in the outlying areas, so Farm Brandhoek School and Langkloof, but as you can see, these are very sparsely populated places. So in Langkloof, they got 266 votes and only 23 in Farm Brandhoek School. So ultimately, this didn't make much difference for them. They trailed quite badly. They only had 367 votes or 14.15%. But what's really interesting is if we actually take a look at the historical data in Kou-Kamma, because we see quite a clear trend forming. So as we look at this election tracker, you'll immediately notice how I've highlighted the 2016 ward elections and 2019 provincial elections in red. And the reason for this is because the border of this ward was actually redrawn after 2019. So it becomes quite difficult to track elections back then versus those post-2019. So it's important to have this in mind because as you can see, the DA in 2016 and 2019 was the largest party in this ward under the old borders. They had 1,250 votes in 2016 and then 1,171 in 2019. So they had about 60.5% in 2016, 50.5% in 2019. The ANC trailed quite badly. They had 797 in 2016, or 38.6%. In 2019, they grew to 940, or 40.6%, but of course this is expected because general elections have a higher voter turnout on average than municipal elections. As for the PA, they hadn't yet been formed as a political party. In 2021, under the new borders, we see how the ANC all of a sudden became the biggest party. They had 692 votes in 2021, or 45.9%. The DA was almost half. They had 385 votes, or 25.6%. And then the PA, as a newly formed party, hadn't made much of an impact yet. They only got 44 votes, or 2.9%. In 2024, we saw the PA really start to come into its own. We see how they got 606 votes, 32.3%. The DA trailed them with 487 votes, 25.9%. And as we check this graph, we see how in 2024, the PA overtook the DA as the second biggest party in this ward. The ANC had 636 votes in 2024, and so they were still the biggest party, albeit by a very fine margin. It was only 33.8%, so barely 1% more than the PA. And then, of course, in the 2025 by-election, everything changed. We see on this graph how the PA overtook the ANC. They got 1,142 votes, and so they'll be very happy with this result. And what will make them particularly happy is that they are now the kingmakers in this council. So let's check out what's actually going to happen. Elections analyst Wayne Sussman explained in this X post what the new Kou-Kamma council composition is. So it's a total of 12 seats, and the ANC used to have 5 seats. They now have 4 seats. And before that, if you remember, they actually had 6 seats. So they've lost 2 seats to the PA in total. The PA had 3 seats now, up from 2. The DA still have 3 seats. An independent candidate has 1 seat. And then the Freedom Front Plus has the remaining 1 seat. And so, as Wayne Sussman explained, the ANC and independent coalition will need additional support or it will fall. If the PA can work with the DA, with either the FF Plus or the independent, a government without the ANC can be formed. And if we take a look at this, say that the PA does decide to work with the DA and FF Plus, because as we know, the DA and FF Plus work together on multiple occasions. They are traditional allies. They can actually have a very comfortable majority in council because the 3 seats of the PA plus the 3 of the DA plus the FF Plus is 7 seats. Add the independent, and that becomes 8 seats. And so 8 seats out of 12 is a very comfortable majority. Alternatively, the PA could decide to side with the ANC and the independent. And of course, 4 plus 1 is 5, plus the PA's 3 would also be 8. And so the PA are in a very strong position here where they are the kingmakers. They can decide which side they want to join. And they could perhaps even get the mayoral position in this council. So it will be very exciting to see how negotiations proceed. Next up, we have Ward 2 in Kouga. Now, this was actually a very strong performance from the DA here. They won the ward with a clear lead. They got 47.44% of the vote and 1,689 votes. Then trailing in second place by almost 700 votes is the PA. They got 978 votes, or 27.47% of the vote. In third place was the ANC with 886 votes, or 24.89% of the vote. And then finally was Cope with only 7 votes, or 0.2% of the vote. And what was particularly interesting in this ward is how all 3 voting districts had different leaders. So up top, at Pelsris Community Hall was the PA. Now what the PA will be particularly happy about is the fact that this was actually an ANC stronghold traditionally. And so the fact that they've been able to overtake the ANC here is very encouraging. What's also important to note about this ward is that it's quite diverse. So Kouga is about 40.8% black, 57.9% colored, and then only about 0.2% white and no Indian. So ultimately, it is majority colored, but a very large black population as well. And so the PA will be very happy that they were able to overtake the ANC. Now, in the second voting district, where Tokyo Sekwale is, that is an ANC stronghold, but again, not a very comfortable win for them. They got 48.63% here in this district. The PA did very nicely to get 32.13%, and then the DA came in with a respectable 19%. But then down south by Aston Bay Hall, this is a DA stronghold, and the DA will be ecstatic because previously they got about 87% here in the last election. Now they've got about 97%. And this is with 1,066 votes. And as you can see, they decimated their opposition. The PA in second place only got 28 votes with 2.55%. The ANC only got 3 votes with 0.27%. And so the DA will be pretty ecstatic. But let's take a look at the previous data in order to see whether this by-election victory really was as impressive as it seems, especially when compared to higher turnout elections, such as general elections and the municipal elections. So much like in my previous tracker, I've highlighted in red the 2016 and 2019 elections because this ward in Kouga was also redrawn after the 2019 result. So again, we can't really take the 2016 and 2019 results too seriously. What we can note is how the ANC's support completely plummeted after the redistricting of this ward. And so in 2021, the DA had 1,520 votes. They were leading with 47.9%. In the 2024 election, they grew to 1,900 votes, and this is understandable because general elections normally have a higher turnout than municipal elections, and this translates to 54.8%. In the 2025 by-election, as we see, they declined slightly, but they still got more votes than they did in the 2021 election. So on the local level, this was the most votes they've ever had in this ward. They'll definitely be happy with this result. The ANC has completely collapsed in this ward. They had 1,381 votes in 2021, or 43.5% of the vote, and they fell all the way down to 26.5%, or 917 votes in the 2024 election. This time around, they're now only at 24.89%, and so they've almost halved their support over here in a space of just 4 years. Looking at the PA, they only received 30 votes in 2021, or 0.9%, but of course this was the election where they only first started competing. In 2024, they burst onto the scene at 334 votes, or 9.6%, and then in this election they got 978 votes, which is very impressive because by-elections normally have a lower turnout. And this is 27.47%. And so they'll be very pleased to know that they have now overtaken the ANC as a second-place party in this ward. Still, it's the DA who will be the most joyous on this occasion because they really enjoyed a resounding win. Now on to the final ward in this contest. The ward I'm talking about is Ward 10 in Makhanda, which was previously known as Grahamstown. So in this ward, we saw the ANC retain control. They had 632 votes, or 49.76%. The DA came runner-up with 335 votes, or 26.38%, and in third place was actually a local party called Makhanda. Now, they've actually run in occasional elections, specifically local elections. They generally don't compete on the national and provincial stage, but they did pretty well with 9.53% of the vote. And then the PA trailed with 6.06%, or 77 votes. Now, what's interesting about this ward is that, again, it's a fairly diverse ward, but it's majority black. So 61% black, 38.7% colored, and then no Indian or white population in the specific area. And so the DA will be very happy because compared to previous elections, they skyrocketed out of nowhere. Now, when we take a look at the historical trends over here, we're going to see just how alarming this result is for the ANC and how happy the DA will be. So when we take a look at the graph in this election tracker, something becomes apparent very quickly, which is that, first of all, the ANC has completely plummeted in recent years, and second of all, the DA seems to have spiked out of nowhere. So this specific board doesn't ever seem to have been redrawn, and so the ANC back in 2016 was the dominant force. They had 84.9% of the vote, or 1,481 votes. In the upcoming provincial election, they rose to 1,540 votes, but their percentage declined to 82.9%. That's clearly because more voters from other parties were turning out to vote. In 2021, their support almost halved. They were at 870 votes, or 67.3%, and so already the decline had started. They did manage to recover somewhat in 2024 to 1,162 votes, although they were a shadow of their former selves at just 68.8% of the vote. And then in this election, they were devastated. They lost their outright majority, went down to 49.76%, or 632 votes. And so while they retained the seat, this will be a worrying result for them. The DA was very interesting. They only had 107 votes in this ward back in 2016, or 6.1% of the vote. We then saw them fall to 55 votes, or 3% of the vote in the 2019 election, and fall yet again to 2021's level of 19 votes, or just 1.5% of the vote. Since then, they seem to have been campaigning rather hard in this area, because in 2024, they recovered some support to 94 votes, or 5.6%, and then in this by-election, they got their highest ever total in this ward of 335 votes, or 26.38%, and so they'll be very ecstatic. Now, as we can see, the EFF has struggled in this ward. They were doing very well in 2019 and in 2024, but they completely collapsed in this latest by-election. And so what this shows us is that the DA's current campaigning really seems to be paying off. And as we've seen in other parts of the country, such as Governor Mbeki, even in Mamelodi, as well as eThekwini in KZN, we see how the DA seems to be making these minor incursions into majority black areas and township areas. And so they'll be very happy to see that their hard electioneering is paying off. But the main takeaway that we can have from these three by-election results is that the ANC seems to be slipping, even in the Eastern Cape, which is one of their strongholds. We saw, even in the by-election where they were able to come away with the win, that their support fell drastically. And we've even seen how the DA as well as the PA seem to be biting into different voter segments that were previously ANC, making for a very interesting matchup in the upcoming municipal elections. Thanks very much for joining me for this video. If you enjoyed it, please remember to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more content. Also, look out for the final part 3 of this major by-election special, which will be released soon. Until next time, I'm Matthew Cohen, and this is the Power Pod.